It's a fundamentally different kind of game. And when you apply the wrong rules to the wrong game, the game gets wonky. So the idea that I'm going to be productive with my relationships has a fundamental flaw built into that statement. Being efficient when in a game that demands inefficiency for it to be effective is fundamentally flawed. We treat relationships like a project, and then we wonder why we get project kind of feelings as opposed to this fundamentally different kind of thing, which is a relationship. It feels uncomfortable. It feels counter to what you want to do. You want to be efficient with your family when what you need to be is present with your family. And to do that, it needs to land in this category called a practice. You know it's a practice when, even though it doesn't go in the exact same flow and it doesn't feel super efficient, you know you're committed to being the kind of person that makes sure it shows up every single day. As humans, we prefer the path of least resistance. We crave convenience, the payoff without the price. But when our lives revolve around comfort, it doesn't deliver. Living in perpetual comfort leaves us weak and asleep. This podcast is an invitation to flip that script, to choose the unlikely path, to get the life you really want through voluntary discomfort. This is Strong and Awake. I'm Dane Sanders. So I want to tell you about my day, Mitch, and how it started. I have been on this run lately where I get to the end of my day and I'm journaling and I'm reflecting and I'm like, I cannot believe how good I have it. And I remember last night I was writing, my little log of my day turned into this desperate prayer, because normally I have these great days, and what that always means is the next day it's not going to be nearly as good as the day it was. Like, there's nowhere to go but down. And there I was thinking, oh my gosh, I just want another one of these days, because everything went in the direction that I was really hoping for. And I had everything lined up. My practice, for those who put up with me long enough, they understand I have a very regimented day. And I had this whole thing orchestrated on how I was going to start my day, get up early, get after it. And sure enough, bro, I got up and I got after it. And I was just hitting my stuff, cold shower, holding my breath, doing my stuff, had my Normatec legs on. I'm journaling and getting that all done. And I'm all set. And I'm about to move into the hardest part, which is my writing. And my workout was coming. That was already confirmed. That happened later. But there's this window of time where I was committed to write some words. And wouldn't you know it, my wife says, oh, would you do me a favor? Could you take Lisi to work? And now let me give you some context, some backdrop. So my daughter, Lisi, is a senior out at Texas Christian University out in Fort Worth. And we don't see her very often. And she's here right now. And I have this kind of longing commitment in my heart to spend more time with my daughter, especially around if it's a holiday or something like that. And she happens to be in town right now. And my thought was, wouldn't it be amazing if I could prioritize that? But I came up against myself because I had this conflict, like right in real time. Like, how do I get this relational need met in the midst of this commitment to productivity, where I was just so locked in on, and that's what I was even determining what a good and bad day was I productive? Did I get all the stuff that I said I was going to get done? And then I have this like odd duck commitment in my life to be present with people and like be relationally connected. And there's so much inefficiency in that commitment. Like, you sit with people and they say things and you got to listen, and it's real time. I can't even 2x what they're saying to me. And it's just a remarkable phenomenon. But I had a decision to make. And the decision was, am I going to drive my daughter to work, which would give me 20 to 40 minutes of 20 minutes with her, 20 minutes on my own. But 20 minutes with her is like gold. I mean, she's in her early 20s. One of these days she'll get married. Like, it's just like I have this shrinking window. The stakes are higher than I think they are. And that was my dilemma. And I have a hunch, especially as folks are headed towards like whatever their New Year's resolution moment is, whether it's actual New Year's or some point in their world where like, no, I'm going to draw a line in the sand. This is really important to me. I'm going to value relationships higher than productivity or the thing. And I knew that was going to be our topic for today. And I knew that this providential interruption was on point. So that's what I want to start with, just to kind of open it up. And I'm curious for you, when you think about this dynamic, is there anything in my narrative that you can relate to?
I relate a lot with that. And my kids are younger. I've got my oldest is 7 and my youngest is 2, and we've got one in between. And for me, the thing that stands out to me with that is I hold productivity so highly or output that I find that even with my kids, like it's so hard to step into their world and play with them or do something that isn't entertaining to me or doesn't feel productive to me. We could do chores together. We could go to the grocery store together, but to like go jump on the trampoline with them or to just sit there and frustratingly watch them spin the puzzle pieces around and around and around trying to get it in the puzzle. That I feel that tension in me of, wow, I'm really addicted or kind of a slave to output and productivity. And that comes out a lot when, playing with my youngest, my kids who I value and I want that connection time. But that's the thing that stood out to me is that it feels like they're in the way of my productivity or something that I hold in such high esteem.
And they are
so backwards.
They are in the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think in this series of like us thinking through, gosh, what are the standard resolutions that people have? These things where they want to see change and transformation happen. We want to start every conversation with, we get you at home, friends. And if you have ever wrestled with these kinds of dynamics, this is the episode for you, because we're going to talk very specifically about how these dynamics work, what we try that often fail, not often, always fail, and why, and offer maybe some explanatory power that some of your well-intentioned efforts, why they fell on their face and why they fall on their face for us, because we can relate to that. But we also want to offer a new way, a different way to relate with the thing in such that you actually would get the dream. And let's talk a little bit about the dream, like the other side of the equation, when somehow you do prioritize the relationships in our lives, these temporal things. I said, time is short with my daughter in her early 20s. It's actually no different calculus for you with younger kids. You're still on the clock. None of us know if today's the last day. I was reading recently Ryan Holiday talking about how it's really healthy practice every time you say goodnight to your kids at any age is to imagine this is the last chance you have to say goodnight. Yeah. And how that is a wise, it sounds morbid, but it's actually really wise because you won't take it for granted. But to get in that headspace, it feels Herculean to get in that headspace, to get in that right mindset, given all the other priorities in your world. But what we want to suggest is there is a path to what you're looking for. But let's name what that is. What is the promised land when it comes to relationships? And I know for me, there's a sense of the dream is to be perpetually in the moment I'm in, not lost in some nostalgic history, not fearful of the future, nor anticipating something great in the future, because it's not real in the future. My interest is to be in reality right here with the person that's in front of me. All the way down to like you and I are recording an episode right now, a conversation, and I'm with my friend Mitch, and over here is a screen, and over here's another screen, and over there is a calendar, and out that window is a whole bunch of responsibilities, and look at all those books I could read, and all the things that are calling my name. But my interest, the dream, is to be right here and to be there in a way that it's not just meaningful for me, but the people I'm with actually experience something different than when I'm kind of half there, when I'm half-hearted. But that's what the promised land looks for me. How does it look for you? If you could wave a magic wand, Mitch.
Yeah, I think presence is a really big one, and not just physical proximity or presence, but like you said, like the whole of you being there. And that sounds a little woo-woo, but I think anyone that's listening to this has experienced that like divided focus, or like you said, like either in that moment being preoccupied or preconsumed with the things on your plate or other things that are going on or problems that you have to solve or worrying about something, or like you were saying earlier, presupposing or like thinking about the future or living in the past, replaying conversations, etc. So I think honestly that the same would be true for me. And then secondly, like, especially as it relates with my wife and kids, considering like being others focused, because even as I relate with others, I notice this mostly with my wife. She'll ask me a great question. I'll respond, and then I move on. I'm not thinking about her. I'm not leaning in with curiosity with her. It's more like, what can I get out of this situation? Or so when I think about, being present, that is also part of it. Being present to the other person and considering them. I think that's what I really want.
Yeah, I can't overstate how powerful that is to be self-forgetful, to not even be too concerned about what am I not doing, because that's all about me, as opposed to who do I get to be to show up for the person in front of me, even while I have responsibilities. Yesterday I was at the chiropractor and I was in a conversation with the office manager, who happens to be the chiropractor's wife, and we were chatting about, she was trying to make the case to me of the benefits of showing up with an expectation that I'll be in and out of there in 5 or 10 minutes. And when I get to sit there for an hour waiting for all the other customers to be dealt with. And she basically tried to frame it as like this is a great opportunity to help you slow down. Right. And I kind of got mad, and I was like, I have other commitments, lady. Like, this isn't just about me and my slowdown. It's also like, every second that I spend comes at a cost. And am I sober to that cost? And yet she's not wrong. It is an opportunity at the same time to be present with myself, to be present with this is reality. Here I am. What am I going to do with that? And could I renegotiate those other commitments? Could I make a request? Could I honor my word, even if my expectations on how it's supposed to look change? So as we consider these juxtapositions of like, how do most of us experience life and how would we like to experience life? Inevitably, every listener who is paying attention to this conversation right now has tried things. They've tried really significant efforts to get there. What are some of the things that you have heard people try, or maybe you've tried yourself, to be more present with family and friends?
Okay, I want to hear your thoughts on this, and the theme of including and asking curious questions and leaning in. I'll answer one, and then I'm going to turn it back on you.
Yeah, great.
I think one of the strategies or things that I have done is just being like, okay, well, I really want to be present, so I'm going to go on the extreme of not planning anything. It needs to be all spontaneous. I'm just going to be open to any text conversations that might come up or anyone I might run into at the store. So leaning far too much on the spontaneous side of things. How about you?
Well, let's take these in turn. And then, because my response to what you're describing, the reason I think those efforts fail is it doesn't really honor what's in front of you. It's like you're not prepared. It's like you're not, kind of like my situation yesterday, describing this kind of invitation for me to value presence framed in a context where it seemed irresponsible to the other realities that I'm on the hook for. I've made other commitments, other places. And if I'm just flippantly like, oh no, whatever's in front of me is most important, really what you're incentivizing is this notion that if people can just get in front of you, they're always going to be the first priority, no matter what, even if they're the lowest value quotient. And I think it's well-intentioned, especially for folks like you and I who are biased towards, like, you're not short on plans and strategies on how to navigate the world. So I get the corrective effort. But when it comes to this ambition to get to the promised land relationally, maybe there's some benefit to the person right in front of you, but I don't know about you, but for me on the other side of it, I feel great discouragement. Like, okay, the fleeting moment with that person was what it was. And in some cases it feels very gratifying, but often I then get to the next relationship and realize, oh, I failed them. I wasn't actually ready for that because I treated everything as kind of an improvisational performance. I know for me, another approach that I've taken is like this real disproportionate gesture toward, oh no, this time I am committed. I'm going to lacerate myself if I in any way break eye contact with the person I'm speaking to, or, look in some weird direction, or am thinking about what's next and anticipating and getting in front. And I'm curious, when I've tried these kinds of things, give me some input. Like, why have they failed so often? Because they fail. It's like I get started with this notion of like, I mean it in my heart and mind. I'm committed to being a relationally driven person, not a productivity driven person. And then I'm left wanting. And any clues as to why that fails?
Well, I think that's present both in the spontaneous and in the, the over, like I'm going to be super spontaneous and authentic, or I'm going to be locked in and fully present in this planned moment.
It's two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like how we're relating with things. They're so transactional. It feels like to me, like it's a fleeting moment. Yes, those things are important. It's important to be present. But what strikes me is they're so focused on just these individual isolated moments and interactions, and it's not higher order, as you would like to say, or further upstream. How are you relating with this thing, and who are you because a relationship is, two-sided, and how are you showing up as a person, not just in that moment, but as who you are. Now that might be too out there, but I'd be curious to see and hear what your diagnosis is for these two sides of that coin.
Yeah. Yeah. I like when you describe it as transactional. It actually isn't getting at the thing. It feels like a very superficial treatment of what's really needed, and a little too catch-all, like, oh, this strategy of I'm just going to be available for anything, or this strategy where I'm going to be so locked in here and committed and planned to, like, always interruptible and fully present to whatever. That is my strategy. That we're adults with real responsibility. So it does require, I think, if that's your plan, is to just have a hierarchy of, like, no, relationship first, productivity second, and I'm going to be disproportionately committed or disproportionately spontaneous. I still have these other realities that are required. Even if you just think of, like, I got to pay the bills. I got to figure out a way to have my projects create enough value to get paid, or, whatever your thing is. And I'll say, even for folks that are, like, independently wealthy, they don't need to work. They don't have these kind of things pressing on them. They still have to take out the trash. They still have to, like, do regular chores in life that need to find their space and time, even if you hold relationships as disproportionately important. And I actually I want to just nod to this. We're going to get to it in a second, but there is a better way. There's a way to have your cake and eat it too. And it might be simpler than you think. But I want to think, are there any other kind of well-intentioned efforts that are guaranteed to fail that come to mind?
I think something that I see in myself, a tendency that I'm very much aware of now, and a lot of my other friends and other working professionals, is, especially with our kids, people tend to want to, batch work. That's great. But when it comes to batching relationships or batch parenting, it doesn't work. We think, oh, I'm going to make this epic memory with my kids. I'm not going to be able to connect with them during the school year or in the evenings, but wait until the weekend.
Disneyland.
Or wait until Disneyland in this summer. We're going to make some epic memories. Yeah. And I think people try that strategy too, where they're like, I don't have time to drop my kid off at work. I don't have time to do this, but just wait until the vacation. Wait until the weekend. And I see that as something that is a really dangerous trap that seems it's like almost like common wisdom. You see it in marketing, you see that in practice very often. And I see that as a really dangerous strategy to try out. Do you resonate with that?
100%. Yeah. I mean, this is the classic finite game, infinite game distinction, right? So the finite game of productivity, I'm going to execute on these deliverables and get the things done and, have your SMART goals and, all these things that are measurable and you can know if you've won or not. But in contrast to the infinite game, which is it's a fundamentally different kind of game. And when you apply the wrong rules to the wrong game, the game gets wonky. So the idea that I'm going to be productive with my relationships has a fundamental flaw built into that statement. So batch producing in a relationship, being efficient when in a game that demands inefficiency for it to be effective, is fundamentally flawed. And I get, to your point, culturally, I get why this gets fed. We get fed this all the time. Like somehow this is like, I remember years and years ago, I offended my brother so much because he asked me what's going on in my life. We don't live in the same city. We don't talk that often. And I was like, do you follow me on Twitter? Like you could it's right there. I say all the thing, like, and as if the whole point was to be up to speed. Like even catching up with old friends is not relationally. It could be, but isn't by default just because you share the information in any way formational to what's going on. And I think that's probably even maybe more insidious than the grand gestures of I'm really going to make relationship a priority. I think what happens way more commonly is we treat relationships like a project, and then we wonder why we get project kind of feelings where it doesn't connect to our hearts, as opposed to this fundamentally different kind of thing, which is a relationship. So I want to offer, without kind of more examples of how we have all tried things and they've failed, let's talk about some solutions. And the one that we lean into a ton in the context of men and women of discomfort is this distinction between our practice and our projects. And our practice, for those who are unfamiliar with the podcast, we basically encourage the development of voluntarily uncomfortable habits. And as you practice those voluntary discomforts, you can actually build them into every single 24-hour window of time, into a day. Your practice is what you do in a 24-hour window. And you can actually think about how you start your day and sustain your day and end your day. And eventually those little stacks of habits turn into a routine. And the routine is really resourceful when you can control all the variables. Like, I'm going to go have coffee with my daughter. And this is like, that's built into every single day. That's what, we have people in our community that they have 25 minutes with each of their children every single day as part of their personal practice. And good for them. It works in this regard, but it's not a productivity effort. And I want to be really clear about this. This is an operating system. They're saying to themselves, success in a given day is when I am wholeheartedly in a particular habit that is inherently uncomfortable. That it's not that I can't wait to go hang out for 25 minutes with my kid. It's I'm doing it as a discipline. And that might sound like sacrilege to some people, like, how dare you, call sacrifice, But in this conversation, by now people should get it. It does feel that way. It feels uncomfortable. It feels counter to what you want to do. You want to be efficient with your family when what you need to be is present with your family. And to do that, it needs to land in this category called a practice. Now, to close the loop, habits, uncomfortable habits that turn into routine are great, but it's a practice when, even though it doesn't go in the exact same flow and it doesn't feel super efficient, you're committed to being the kind of person that makes sure it shows up every single day. So I want to go back to my example at the top of the show with me and Lisi. So this is real time. This is today. I am on the hook for a commitment to get writing accomplished before my head hits the pillow tonight to make good on my committed practice. And this was my calculus. I realized in the middle of my day, unplanned, it was a total interruption, a whirlwind in a sense, I was given an opportunity of a lifetime. My wife said, do you want to spend 20 minutes with your daughter? And I said, yes, 100% yes. Because that's in alignment with my conscience, with my integrity. This is what I want. I want to be known and to know. So, and it happens in little mini moments like this. So jump into the call. Sure enough, we had all these things with this fun little moment where I used to take her to school and we used to sing the song when I took her to school, but now she's in her early 20s and we still sang the song and she initiated on singing this. It's so silly. And yet it was actually the thing she made fun of me most. And yet she was the one who was like, yeah, this is that moment. And that happened. And I'm so glad. And then I drove home. On the drive home, it was interesting. I actually had a 20-minute window where I was uncommitted to things because I wasn't writing. So what did I think of? There are other things that are part of my practice that could fit in this little slot. And I ended up having 3 other relational calls that were very critical. One to a dear friend who's going through a divorce, and one to another friend who we have a common relationship with that demanded some conversation. He had reached out to me quite a while ago and I hadn't closed that loop. And then another friend, and even as I'm calling, and the person that I had an obligation to, I was kind of hoping it would go to voicemail. So I could just leave a message and check the box. And then they answered. And I was like, okay, I get to be all in right now. And I wholeheartedly gave myself to the conversation. And anyways, long story short, got to the end of it. And here we are recording, and guess what hasn't happened yet? My writing, my committed practice. But guess what I know will happen before my head hits the pillow? The immovable object, the piece of my life that I know is my wholehearted commitment. This is what's going to define whether today's a good or bad day, not circumstances going my way, but my commitment to my practice, which is very distinct from my projects. And I get there's nuance here, right? Because someone might say, well, writing sure sounds like a project. When it comes to the uncomfortable practice of finding a way so that this operating system level thing happens, not like the application system that runs on my operating. I know that I'm going to, all my projects are going to work really well as long as I have this baseline minimal viable practice that happens every single day, which includes my writing. And because I had enough reps historically to get that done, I had great confidence in the morning that I could say, oh, my day's not going to look like I think it's going to look, but I'm going to have a way to get there. And I have enough resilience, practice, and I'm on the hook. You can ask me next time we record, did I write today? And I'm confident what my answer will be. But I want to say to folks that are home, getting to this kind of a disposition, I'm not trying to be a hero in this. I'm just trying to say, no, I'm weathered. I've worked on my practice for a long, long time. And for every single person that has ever made any kind of success in their life, nobody has drifted their way to success. Nobody has drifted their way to relational success, getting projects done, doing big efforts, unless they swim against the current somewhere in their life where they account for all the variables that are at play. And I want to suggest to those who are listening, there's a path to get there. Every single person I know has a means by which they can develop a personal practice that can be transformative to their life, where they can still account for things going wonky in the middle of a day. But I'm curious, you've been developing your practice for a number of years. I'm curious, like how does that resonate with you and how you experience that in these kinds of moments?
I think the reps are really important, and just getting clear on what you want and who you want and the kind of person that would do those things or that would accomplish that. I think that's been really big for me. And sometimes it starts, every practice starts, like you said, with these seeds of a routine, and before that, habits and a commitment to these things. And there's a number of things that I'm trying to get the reps in, that I'm doing, that are not easy. They're not, those paths aren't worn yet. But for those things that are really important for me, I'm starting to install these habits and get those reps. Like one of the things relationally specifically is I noticed that one of the ways that I can be more present is by completely abstaining from having my phone on my body, like in those windows when my presence is demanded. And like, in those, especially with my kids and my wife, before the hours in between waking up or just after my workout, and when I'm getting them in the car to go off to school, and when they get home from school, and when I put them down, like there's no phone on me during those times. And that's been one of those things, like I'd love to have the discipline and cultivate the strength and the presence to
not check, right?
To not check.
Yeah.
But even just having it in my pocket on complete silent, do not disturb, still there's those phantom buzzes. There's that constant reminder in my pocket of like, oh, there's other things going on. So that's one of the things that, I've been doing for probably the last, 6 to 9 months that has actually really, really helped. But I think there's a number of things that like, it's really easy to say, I want this, like aspirationally, or to have these, like you'd say, like provisional commitments to things, but actually like releasing on that pride that I have of like, no, I should just be able to do this, and just putting some actual practices in place and habits in place that actually help me to be awake and aware and strong enough to do these things has been really resourceful to me.
Yeah, I think too, and I think about folks in our community who are just getting started. I mean, there's a couple things that are really two that come to mind right out of the gate that are kind of unfair advantages that they get as they're building up these habits that turn into routines, that turn into practice. And that's number one, they don't make a lot of decisions. The cognitive load is very low. If the first 3 months of participating in our community, it's all decided for you. You say yes, and it's all kind of laid out. And every single person who does MWOD says that reduction in cognitive load is massive. They just surrender to it. And that's what opens up the door. But what keeps them in the room when the door opens is the community. is they're not having to decide what to do, nor are they white knuckling it. And instead, there's a sense. I was just in a sidebar text with one of our members today who was sharing, he feels really behind and overweight, and compared to other people in the community, like, oh gosh, it's really people, he doesn't want to show up. He wants to do the stuff, but he wants to do it on his own. But he said, oh, but I'm going to go check in. I was like, here's what I recommend you do. Read verbatim what you just told me to your community, to your micro pod community within MWOD. Because here's what I know will happen 100% of the time. People will get him. They'll understand. They're not going to beat him up. They're not going to shame him. And they're going to stand with him and say, well, great. So what do you want to do? And he'll have a chance to make a decision. But he'll do it in the context of a collective, of a community. And he knows, and I know, because we have enough reps at this as a community, the likelihood of him being true to his true self will go through the ceiling. And the chance for him to actually make good on his commitments holistically will get there. Because he's practicing the hard thing. And it's funny, that's the big shorthand for everything that we do at MWOD is like, when in doubt, do the thing you don't want to do, that you know you're going to be glad you did. If you do that as a rule of life, life will really turn out. Hard choices, easy life, easy choices, hard life, says Jerzy Gregorek, and he's right. And if that's what you want, make that your central tenet. Don't join MWOD, just make your whole life about that. Do that. But if you know that you have a track record that on your own, you don't have the muscles yet to make good on that on your own, don't do it alone. Invite some friends, join MWOD, do something. And if you're curious, if you're nervous about like, where do I start? There's so many decisions. Stop deciding. Join MWOD, be a part of the community where it's pre-baked for you. Get your legs under you so that you can move forward in this idea of voluntary discomfort as a mechanism to getting the life you really crave, the unlikely path to the life you want. And that's our invitation. It's always our invitation. But go ahead, Mitch.
I was going to say, I'm just going to take that a little bit further too, because I think going back to the top of like what we really want, what we really desire, a lot of it is centered, not just, I don't want to spend time with this person. I don't want just like face to face or to see this. Like we want connection. We want support. We want vulnerability. We want challenge in relationships. That's like really deeply what we want. So showing up in a community, choosing voluntary discomfort and whatever that looks like you can get those reps. There is no easy button to relationships and to connection. And I think getting those reps, getting more familiar and putting yourselves in a position where not just physically or emotionally, but like relationally, you're putting yourself into opportunities to get those reps at those uncomfortable but really important things. That's going to show up in all kinds of other places in your life and in other relationships. So
friends, if you're compelled by any of this, here's what I want you to do. Right now, I want you to go to mwod.io/apply. Just fill out, answer the questions for yourself. We don't even care if you hit submit at the end of it. What matters for you is you get real with yourself. That great line, let's get real or let's not play. If you've been putting up with this conversation this long, there's something in your gut that is telling you that even though it makes you want to barf a little bit, you know you want this. And the pathway to get there is your first step. It's one movement. Go to MWOD.io, MWOD.io/apply. Fill out those answers. And then at the end of those answers, figure out what the right next step is for you. And we hope you do. I'm so grateful for our community, man. It is the level of, I don't need a Thanksgiving celebration to be grateful for this thing. Every single day, every 24-hour window, to know that I have friends that are choosing to suffer for the good, the right, the true, and the beautiful, to become strong and awake for love's sake. It is one of the greatest gifts in my life. And you're a big part of that, Mitch. So thank you, man.
Same, Dane. Thank you. Really appreciate you, friend.
Men and Women of Discomfort is our membership community, and we are open to everyone. But keep in mind, our tagline is, it's probably not for you. If we're wrong about that, or if you want to find out for yourself, you can find us at MWOD.io.